The Odd Couple's banned episodes just leaked. When ABC edited the show for syndication, they didn't just cut commercials. They erased entire scenes showing Felix and Oscar's secret life. The missing footage reveals jokes too wild for 1970s TV, musical moments that got axed over licensing fights, and the real reason behind the show's format change. What they tried to hide will change how you see this classic sitcom forever. The story of The Odd Couple started on Broadway when it premiered on March 10, 1965. Mike Nichols directed the production, bringing together Walter Matthau as Oscar Madison and Art Carney as Felix Unger. Oscar was a carefree sports writer who left a mess wherever he went. Felix was a news writer obsessed with cleanliness and order. When these two divorced men moved in together, their opposite personalities clashed in ways that had audiences roaring with laughter. The play was an instant hit. It ran for 964 performances and won multiple Tony Awards. Matthau won Best Actor, Nichols won Best Director, and Simon took home the award for Best Author. Even the scenic designer Oliver Smith earned a Tony for his work on the production. People connected with the humor, but they also saw something deeper. Divorce rates were rising in the 1960s, and Simon had managed to turn an uncomfortable reality into something people could laugh about. Critics sometimes dismissed Simon's work as lightweight entertainment, but audiences felt differently. His writing captured the everyday struggles of relationships, loneliness, and friendship in a way that was both funny and relatable. The play became so popular that the phrase odd couple entered the English language as a way to describe any two people who seemed completely mismatched. 20 years later, Simon decided to revisit his idea. In 1985, he created a gender-swapped version with female leads, but it didn't capture the same magic. Even so, The Odd Couple remained a favorite. Theater groups across the country continued performing it. Decades after its premiere, it is still one of the most frequently staged plays in American theater. 3 years after the play debuted, the story moved to the big screen. The 1968 film adaptation, directed by Gene Saks and written by Simon, starred Jack Lemmon as Felix and brought back Walter Matthau as Oscar. It premiered on May 2, 1968, at Radio City Music Hall and became a massive box office success. During its initial 14-week run, it earned $3.1 million. By the time it left theaters, it had made $44.5 million in the U.S., making it the third highest-grossing film of the year. Critics praised the film for its sharp dialogue and the chemistry between Lemmon and Matthau. It holds a 98% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a sign of how well it has stood the test of time. The story resonated with audiences, especially as divorce was becoming more common. It showed the struggles of single life in a way that was both humorous and honest. The film's success led to more adaptations. In 1970, ABC launched a sitcom version starring Tony Randall as Felix and Jack Klugman as Oscar. The concept was even turned into a Saturday morning cartoon called The Oddball Couple, where the mismatched roommates were reimagined as a tidy cat and a messy dog. 30 years after the original film, Lemmon and Matthau reunited for The Odd Couple 2, but this time, the magic wasn't there. The sequel flopped, earning less than half of the original's box office total. Despite that failure, the 1968 film remains one of the greatest comedies ever made, and a defining moment in Simon's career. Television producer Gary Marshall saw potential in The Odd Couple as a sitcom. Known for shows like Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, he had a talent for turning good ideas into TV hits. ABC knew it was taking a risk with The Odd Couple. The play and film had been hits, but the idea of two divorced men living together raised concerns. executives worried that some audiences might assume Oscar and Felix were a couple, rather than just roommates. To prevent confusion, they added an opening narration stating that both men were divorced. They also changed the name of Felix's ex-wife from Frances to Gloria, fearing that Frances could be mistaken for the male name Francis. Tony Randall's path to playing Felix Unger in The Odd Couple started long before the show even existed. Born Aryeh Leonard Rosenberg on February 26, 1920, he spent years building his career on Broadway. His sharp comedic timing and stage experience made him a natural performer. Before stepping into Felix's role, he had already starred in Mr. Peepers and shared the screen with Hollywood legends like Doris Day and Rock Hudson. But it was his work in theater, especially in productions of The Odd Couple, that prepared him for the role that would define his career. Felix was obsessive and neurotic. He fussed over every little thing, making audiences both laugh and cringe. Randall's theater training gave him an edge, allowing him to bring the right mix of humor and realism. His performance was so convincing that people started seeing him as Felix in real life. That kind of recognition was flattering, but it also made it harder for him to take on different roles. Even with his talent, the show wasn't an instant hit. It struggled in the ratings, often ranking in the bottom 10. Still, Randall's performance stood out. He earned 5 Emmy nominations, finally winning one in 1975 after the show had already been canceled. Before the show started, Randall had a strong opinion on casting. He pushed for Mickey Rooney to play Oscar Madison, believing their contrasting styles would work well together. Executive producer Gary Marshall disagreed. He wanted Jack Klugman, a decision that changed everything. The chemistry between Randall and Klugman became the heart of the show. Jack Klugman had already played Oscar Madison in the Broadway production of The Odd Couple in 1965, replacing Walter Matthau. He brought a different energy to the role, making Oscar more than just a messy guy. He made him real and lovable. By the time the TV version was in development, Klugman had already won an Emmy for The Defenders and had a Tony nomination for Gypsy. He had also appeared in 12 Angry Men and several anthology series, proving his range as an actor. But comedy came naturally to him. When Gary Marshall pushed for him to play Oscar, Randall wasn't convinced. He still believed Mickey Rooney was the better choice. But Klugman won him over, and their partnership became one of the best in television history. Oscar Madison was everything Felix wasn't. He was sloppy, carefree, and always had a cigar in hand. His messy habits drove Felix crazy, creating a perfect setup for comedy. Klugman's performance earned him 2 Emmy Awards during the show's run, from 1970 to 1975. Off-screen, he and Randall worked closely together, often rewriting scenes to make the jokes sharper. Despite their differences, they developed a deep friendship. Randall was refined and cultured, while Klugman was simple and direct. But they shared a respect for the craft of acting. When Klugman lost a vocal cord to throat cancer in 1989, Randall stood by him, encouraging him to keep performing. They reunited for projects like The Sunshine Boys, proving their bond went beyond television. The casting process for The Odd Couple could have led to a very different show. Dean Martin was considered for Felix Unger, which would have given the character a smooth, charming personality instead of a nervous, obsessive one. Mickey Rooney was also in the running for Oscar Madison, a choice that would have made the role louder and more exaggerated. Art Carney, who played Felix in the original Broadway production, was another option. But Gary Marshall fought hard for Randall and Klugman, knowing their dynamic would be the key to the show's success. At first, The Odd Couple struggled to find an audience, but over time, people connected with the characters. The show became a cult classic, Loved for its humor and heart, the friendship between Randall and Klugman made their performances feel real. When Randall passed away on May 17, 2004, Klugman was devastated. He later said, "Tony opened me up. I didn't know how much I missed him until I lost him." Their partnership had created one of the most memorable sitcoms in television history. When The Odd Couple premiered on ABC on September 24, 1970, it had everything going for it. The Broadway play had been a hit in 1965, and the 1968 film adaptation had been well received. But when the TV show started, things didn't go as smoothly as expected. Ratings were never great, and it struggled to find a large audience. What kept it alive was strong writing, critical praise, and two unforgettable performances by Tony Randall and Jack Klugman. Randall and Klugman played off each other perfectly. Randall's Felix Unger was obsessive and high-strung, while Klugman's Oscar Madison was laid-back and messy. The contrast was simple, but the way they brought it to life made the show special. Every year the series was on the air, both actors were nominated for Emmy Awards. That kind of consistency was rare. Klugman won in 1971 and again in 1973. Randall had to wait until 1975, the show's final season, to take home his award. When he accepted it, he joked about the show's cancellation, saying he wished he still had a job. The series was also nominated for Outstanding Comedy Series 3 times in 1971, 1972, and 1974. It never won, but Klugman picked up a Golden Globe in 1974, proving just how much critics appreciated his performance. Still, none of this changed the fact that The Odd Couple had trouble pulling in viewers. It never made it into the top 30 Nielsen ratings during any of its 5 seasons. One major issue was its time slot. ABC aired it on Fridays at 9:30 p.m., a difficult spot that failed to draw a large audience. ABC was also a third-place network at the time, which meant it didn't have the marketing power of CBS or NBC. Even though ratings were low, ABC kept renewing it. Summer reruns often performed better than the original episodes, which convinced the network to keep giving it another chance. Klugman, however, was frustrated. He believed the show was one of the best on television and deserved more recognition. One reason it struggled might have been its humor. While other sitcoms relied on slapstick or over-the-top jokes, The Odd Couple focused on character-driven comedy. That made critics love it, but mainstream audiences sometimes overlooked it. Something did change after the first season. In 1971, the show switched from a single-camera format with a laugh track to a multi-camera setup filmed in front of a live audience. This was a big decision, and it was pushed by Randall and Klugman themselves. They knew a live audience would help sharpen the timing of their performances. The move paid off. The show became funnier, and the actors had more energy. But even with these improvements, The Odd Couple was always on the verge of cancellation. Then came syndication. That was when everything changed. After ABC aired its final episode on March 7, 1975, the show found a new life in reruns. By the late 1970s, local stations across the country were airing it daily, and suddenly, it had the audience it had always deserved. In New York City, WPIX-TV aired it 4 times a day because demand was so high. Viewers who had missed it during its original run now had the chance to see why critics had loved it so much. Klugman had always believed the show would thrive after its network run. He and Randall made a smart financial move during production. Instead of taking their full salaries up front, they accepted a percentage of the syndication profits. It was a risk, but it turned out to be the right call. As reruns became more popular, the money poured in. One reason the show worked so well in syndication was that it never felt outdated. The humor wasn't tied to specific events or trends. It was built on something timeless, the clash between two completely opposite personalities. Everyone knew an Oscar or a Felix, and that made the show relatable no matter what decade it was airing in. When The Odd Couple went into syndication, its episodes had to be shortened to fit new time slots. Originally, each episode ran about 25 to 26 minutes, but syndication cuts reduced them to around 22 minutes to make room for extra commercials. These edits might seem small, but they had a big impact on the show's pacing and comedic timing. Scenes were removed, jokes lost their punch, and some episodes felt rushed. One of the most noticeable changes happened in Strike Up the Band, or Else. More than a minute was cut, which meant losing key moments that helped build the story. In The Insomniacs, a classic joke was completely removed. In the original version, Oscar and Murray sing softly to help Felix fall asleep. Just as he starts to drift off, Murray suddenly yells, "One more time!" waking Felix up again. That entire moment was gone in syndication, taking away one of the best laughs in the episode. Sometimes, the cuts made things confusing. In That Was No Lady, Felix does a Fred Astaire impression, but that scene was removed. Later in the episode, there's a reference to Ginger Rogers that now makes no sense. In Your Mother Wears Army Boots, opera singer Martina Arroyo had less screen time due to edits, which made the episode feel incomplete. Music licensing caused even bigger problems. When The Odd Couple was first made in the 1970s, no one thought about future home video releases or streaming services. Studios didn't secure long-term rights to the songs used in the show. That became an issue later, when CBS/Paramount didn't want to pay for music rights. Instead of spending money to keep episodes intact, they simply removed entire scenes. One of the biggest losses happened in Gloria Moves In. In the original episode, Felix sings "One for My Baby" during a poker game, but later releases completely cut that scene. Another example comes from Strike Up the Band, or Else, where Pernell Roberts sings "Cocktails for Two." The scene was a big part of the joke. Felix assumes Roberts will sing a country song, but he surprises everyone with a sophisticated tune. The joke no longer made sense when the song was removed. Music was a big part of The Odd Couple's charm. Felix loved to sing, and those moments added to his character. Cutting them took away some of what made him so unique. Fans were frustrated because these changes weakened the show's humor and personality. Seasons 3 to 5 were hit especially hard by these edits. Our Fathers had a funny scene where Barbara Rhodes, playing a gangster's moll, sang off-key. That performance added to her character's comedy, but syndication edits removed it. In That Was No Lady, Felix performed cheek to cheek, but that scene was cut too. Without it, later references to Ginger Rogers seemed random. Even heartfelt moments disappeared. In The Insomniacs, Oscar and Murray sang "Dream" to help Felix sleep. It was a rare moment of friendship mixed with humor, but syndication removed it, leaving the episode without one of its best emotional beats. Because the official releases didn't restore these missing moments, some fans took matters into their own hands. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Columbia House released VHS tapes of The Odd Couple that often contained uncut episodes. Dedicated fans began collecting these tapes, comparing them to the edited versions and identifying missing scenes. Some even worked to restore lost moments like Felix's "One for My Baby" performance. They digitized old VHS recordings and shared them with other fans through private groups. But these efforts faced challenges. VHS tapes don't last forever, and the picture quality degrades over time. Without access to the original master tapes, high-quality restorations were impossible. Copyright laws also made it difficult for fans to distribute these uncut versions widely. The Odd Couple changed completely after its first season. When it premiered in 1970, the show used a single-camera setup with a laugh track added later. This gave it a movie-like feel, but something was missing. Tony Randall and Jack Klugman, the stars of the show, weren't happy. Randall had a long history in theater where real audiences reacted in real time. He hated the idea of pausing for fake laughter. Klugman agreed. The show had great dialogue and sharp comedic timing, but without a live audience, it felt flat. By 1971, ABC made a big decision. They switched to a multi-camera format filmed in front of a live audience. This was a major change. The production team had to rebuild the entire set at Paramount Studios. The new setup was bigger and designed to accommodate multiple cameras and live reactions. It wasn't just a technical upgrade. It changed the way the actors performed. Randall and Klugman thrived under the new system. The energy in the room fueled their comedy, and the audience's reactions helped shape the timing of jokes. If a line didn't land right, they could adjust on the spot. If something unexpected got a big laugh, they could play into it. The visual style changed too. The lighting became brighter, so every movement and expression could be seen from multiple angles. The pacing picked up. Klugman's exaggerated double takes and Randall's precise physical comedy became even more important. The new format made the show feel faster and funnier. Season 2 didn't just look different, it felt like a completely new show. Switching to multi-camera also meant changing the set. In Season 1, the apartment was based on the 1968 film version of The Odd Couple. It was large and detailed, perfect for single-camera filming. But it was too complicated for a live studio audience setup. The production team scrapped the old design and built a new one. The new apartment was more compact with an open layout. The kitchen and living room were connected, allowing the actors to move freely while staying in view of the cameras. This smaller set had an unexpected effect. It made the comedy sharper. In Season 1, Felix and Oscar had more space, which meant they could avoid each other. In Season 2, they were always in close quarters. When they argued, there was no escaping. This added to the tension and made their personality clashes even funnier. Felix's obsession with neatness and Oscar's total disregard for cleanliness felt more exaggerated when they had nowhere to go. There were other technical adjustments too. The lighting was now brighter and more even, making sure the actors' movements were always visible. This matched the show's new energy. Randall and Klugman started using bigger gestures and bolder expressions. Every little detail mattered, and the cameras captured everything. These changes made the show feel more like live theater, which suited Randall perfectly. Behind the scenes, the transition to Season 2 wasn't smooth. There were constant disagreements. Gary Marshall, the show's producer, fought with ABC executives over the format. He and the lead actors hated the laugh track. Randall thought it was insulting to the audience. He believed people could decide when to laugh without being told. Klugman backed him up. When ABC finally agreed to film in front of a live audience, there were more problems. The network worried about costs. Building a new set wasn't cheap, and they weren't sure the change would pay off. There were also arguments about character development. Randall and Klugman wanted to stay true to their roles. Felix as neurotic but lovable, Oscar as sloppy but charming. ABC worried that Felix's quirks might go too far and turn viewers away. The biggest controversy was about how the show portrayed two divorced men living together. In the early 1970s, networks were careful about how relationships were shown on television. ABC insisted that Felix and Oscar's living situation had to be clear. They were roommates out of necessity, not choice. To reinforce this, Certain details about their pasts were tweaked from episode to episode. The goal was to make sure there was no confusion for audiences. Guest stars played a huge role in highlighting Felix and Oscar's cultural differences. The show featured an unusual mix of famous names, from opera singers to sports legends. Every guest star added to the contrast between Felix's refined world and Oscar's love for chaos. One memorable appearance came from opera star Martina Arroyo. She fit perfectly into Felix's love for classical music, creating a hilarious clash with Oscar's total disinterest. Another great example was ballet dancer Edward Villela. In one episode, Felix tried to teach children ballet. Of course, he dragged Oscar into it too. Watching Oscar stumble through a ballet performance only made Felix's passion look more ridiculous. On the other side, sports stars gave Oscar a chance to shine. Tennis legends Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs, football players Bubba Smith and Deacon Jones, and even sportscaster Howard Cosell all made appearances. Oscar fit right in with these guests, while Felix always found himself completely out of place. ABC also found ways to cross-promote the show. The Odd Couple had connections to Monday Night Football and Password, blending different audiences while still keeping the focus on Felix and Oscar's constant clashing. These weren't just random cameos. They reinforced the show's core idea: two men from completely different worlds trying to live together. The show also blended fiction with real life in subtle ways. Felix Unger's address at 74th Street and Central Park West wasn't just a made-up location. It was a reference to Tony Randall's actual home at the San Remo, a famous apartment building in New York City. When the show reached seasons 4 and 5, exterior shots of the San Remo were used as Felix and Oscar's apartment, adding an extra layer of authenticity. The Odd Couple aired on ABC from 1970 to 1975. Even though it became a hit in syndication, it struggled during its original run. Ratings were the biggest issue. The show had dedicated fans, but it could never beat the competition. In its first season, it aired on Thursdays at 9:30 p.m. That meant going up against The Flip Wilson Show and Ironside, two of NBC's biggest hits. Even Nancy, a smaller NBC show, took away viewers. In the early 70s, most people watched one channel all night since switching between them wasn't easy. The Odd Couple wasn't their first choice. After the first season, ABC tried to fix things by moving it to Friday nights. This helped a little. It aired after The Partridge Family, which had a strong audience. The ratings went up, but not by much. There was another problem, too. The first season was filmed with a single camera and no live audience. Tony Randall and Jack Klugman hated this. Comedy, they believed, needed real reactions. Without an audience, the timing felt off. Starting in season 2, the show switched to a 3-camera setup with a live audience. The difference was huge. The jokes landed better, and the show felt livelier. Even with these changes, the show was almost canceled every year. ABC didn't keep it on because it was a hit. They just couldn't find a cheaper or more reliable replacement. Then something unexpected happened. After the show ended, syndication turned it into a sensation. Local stations aired it multiple times a day. The show finally found the audience it had always deserved. Jack Klugman had predicted this. He and Tony Randall made a fortune from syndication royalties. But during its original run, the ratings never improved enough. The final episode aired in 1975. It was called Felix Remarries. For 5 years, Felix Unger had been trying to win back his ex-wife, Gloria. It had been a major part of the show. In this episode, he finally succeeds. The wedding is a perfect Odd Couple moment. Felix panics over tiny details. He worries about cracked ice and leaky pipes. His son Leonard, played by Leif Garrett, adds to the chaos. These little things remind everyone why Felix and Gloria didn't work the first time. But the real heart of the episode is Felix's goodbye to Oscar Madison. Their friendship had been the core of the show. Felix, the obsessive neat freak, and Oscar, the carefree slob, had somehow made their odd living arrangement work. Now, Felix was moving out. As he packed, he turned to Oscar and said, "5 years ago, you took me in, a broken man on the verge of mental collapse. I leave here a cured human being." It was a touching moment, one of the best farewell scenes in TV history. Then Felix did something classic. As a final tribute to their years of bickering, he dumped a wastebasket onto the floor. Oscar, staying true to himself, said he would clean it up. Then he changed his mind. Felix couldn't help himself. He sneaked back in to clean it up anyway. It was the perfect ending. Their dynamic hadn't changed, and that made it feel real.